In the brutal heart of the Montana winter, where snow erases every line on the land, a life was being sold as merchandise. Shackled by her own brother, June possessed only two things: the biting cold and the life growing inside her. But when a kick from within was not a plea, but a command, she did the unthinkable. She ran. But to flee from man was only to face the cruelty of nature. In the endless wilderness, could she find sanctuary? Or would the only person she finds be someone even more broken than herself? The cold came first. A biting cold that swallowed the barren land of Montana in a mournful white. The snow fell without a sound, but its weight was enough to break branches and bury all hope. At the edge of a frostbitten cattle yard, a life was shackled to a wagon. She was merchandised. Her name was June, 22 years old, with a belly round with life and lips cracked from the cold. Her brother stood a few feet away, his voice dry as he bartered with a rancher who smelled of whiskey and leather. In his hands were her chains, her future, the price of a cold weapon. "She's healthy," he said. "Strong legs, doesn't talk much. 7 months, but the baby will come clean." The rancher looked her over with dead eyes. "And she doesn't run." "She won't," her brother grinned. "Not anymore." That was when it happened. Not the gentle flutter she had grown used to. No, this was a jolt, decisive and powerful from deep inside her belly. Like a small fist knocking from within. It was not pain. It was a demand. June's breath caught, her spine stiffened. Another jolt, then another. She closed her eyes, whispering a vow into the cold void. "I hear you, baby, I hear you. And I swear, I won't let them sell you too." Snow clung to her lashes, wind burned her cheeks. The wagon creaked as the rancher prepared to haul his goods away. The scrape of iron chains sounded as she was yanked toward the rear. Her brother never once looked back. The opportunity came as a jarring jolt when a wheel hit a stump. Just enough of a lurch. June moved. She twisted. A turn with all her strength, her shoulders slamming into the man beside her. The chain went taut, caught on the rail, and snapped with a dry crack. The rancher cursed. She rolled. Her feet hit the snow, her knees buckled, her body falling into white, into cold, into freedom. The impact stole the air from her lungs. Pain lanced up from her side, but she was on her feet before they could scream. Limping, bleeding, running. Behind her, men shouted. Boots crunched on the snow, but she did not stop. Branches slapped her face, ice sliced her skin. The world became a blur of two colors, gray and red. The gray of the snow, the red of her blood. Inside her, another heartbeat pulsed with hers, like a twin drum urging. "Run, Mama, run." No one had ever protected her. But she could protect this life, even if it killed her. Twilight fell. The snow deepened. Strength left her like a traitor. She slipped. Her body tumbled down a ravine deep enough to swallow half of her. The cold silenced her. She could not think. And then another kick. Softer this time, not urgent, not afraid, just a presence. "I'm here," she whispered through lips that had turned blue. "We're still here." She clawed forward, dragging herself through the snow, and then she saw it. A tiny speck of light. Faint, but steady, flickering through the trees. A fire. A roof. A chance. She did not smile. She did not cry. She just moved, one breath at a time, 1 inch at a time. She pressed a hand to her stomach. The baby was quiet now, still trusting. "Hold on, little one," she whispered into the darkness. "Mama's not done yet." The wind shifted just after dusk. Thomas froze mid-swing, axe halfway through a log of pine. He tilted his head, listening. Years alone in the woods had sharpened his senses beyond the needs of speech. The sound came first. Sharp and out of place. A ragged breath, and something softer beneath it. He dropped the axe and moved, quick and light. Thomas slipped through the trees, his boots making only a faint crunch on the snow. A lifetime of silence had made him a shadow. He followed the broken branches and a whisper of blood on the white snow. Not an animal then, and then he saw her. She lay there, crumbled in the snow like a sparrow with a broken wing. One hand was curled protectively over her belly. Her lips were blue, her hair matted with ice. A crust of blood dried along her temple. The child within her was obvious. 7 months, maybe 8. She opened her eyes. They were nearly lifeless. But her mouth formed a single word. Help. Thomas crouched, studying her. His brow furrowed, not in confusion, but in calculation. Snow had already half covered her. The wolves would find her before dawn, or the cold would. Either way, she would not make it on her own. He stood straight, scanning the trees. Multiple tracks, boots heavier than hers, deep heel prints. Large men, possibly with horses. They would come looking. He moved without a word. Quick and clean. He snatched up pine branches, dragging them behind him to erase the blood trail. He kicked snow over every footprint she had left, looping the path to confuse the direction. In the brush behind her, he dug out a snare trap. Not for animals. For men. If they followed, they would limp back. He returned to her. She had stopped shivering. Thomas sighed through his nose. Then, without a word, he bent down and lifted her into his arms. She was light, an absurd lightness. But her breath still came. Faint and fragile. Damn waste, he muttered. Freezing to death with a baby in you. What kind of idiot leaves you out here? He adjusted her weight against his chest and started walking. His cabin was a half-mile east, hidden in a thicket of evergreens and draped in snow. Smoke no longer rose from its chimney. The fire was lit only when needed. He hadn't thought he'd need it again this week. When they arrived, he kicked the door open with one boot, careful not to jostle her. Inside, he gently placed her on the cot beside the stove. The space smelled of pine tar, old wool, and iron. Clean, though bare. Thomas moved without pause. He stoked the embers, layered on fresh logs, and lit the fire. Warmth crawled out across the floor like a waking beast. He took off her soaked boots, setting them near the hearth, then wrapped a thick fur over her legs. Her fingers were ice. He carefully tucked them beneath the blanket. Only then did he speak again, half to himself. I don't feed strays. I don't take in folks. But dying out there, in my woods, would be a waste of good snow. He sat across from her, watching as color slowly returned to her face. Her breaths grew steadier. Something like peace settled in the furrow of her brow. He stared at the fire. It crackled, orange and gold, licking the iron belly of the stove. He remembered another fire, another night, the screams, the smoke. His daughter's small fingers slipping from his grasp in a burning doorway. He had not lit a fire for anyone since. Now he stoked it again, for a woman he did not know, for a child he had never seen. Outside, the wind howled like something ancient and unforgiving, but inside, the cabin pulsed with a warmth. An old warmth, a dangerous one. The woman slept. Thomas said nothing more. But as he watched the fire burn, his eyes stayed on her belly, not out of curiosity, but out of obligation. Because for the first time in years, he had lit a fire not just to survive, but to keep someone else alive. June woke to the crackle of fire and the scent of pine wood. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The world was quiet, still, and strangely soft. She blinked, her head sinking into a pillow stuffed with straw and old wool. Her fingers curled. Around the blanket, heavy and coarse, but warm, she sat up slowly. The cabin was small and compact. Every item was placed for function, not for charm. A pot of stew still steamed beside the stove, a wooden spoon resting neatly beside it. But the thing that made her hold her breath sat in a corner, cradled by the hearth's warmth like a secret. A wooden cradle. It was old, hand-carved. One leg had been mended, but it had been placed with care, angled to catch the warmth. Its interior was lined with a folded quilt. She looked down at her own belly, swollen beneath the borrowed shirt. The baby kicked once, soft, present. "We're safe," she whispered. Thomas was not there, but his presence lingered in every rough-edged kindness. A wooden comb lay beside a candle, its teeth sanded smooth. Next to the stew pot, a folded scrap of paper held a single line in rough, squared handwriting. "Don't burn the stew. And don't lift anything heavy. Your belly is as big as a grain barrel." June smiled. The smile came unexpectedly, like warmth, breaking through frost. Later that day, Thomas returned, carrying 2 bundles of firewood on one shoulder. He nodded at her without ceremony. "You're up." "I am. Good." She watched him move, efficient and precise, a man who had learned to waste nothing. I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly. "Don't," he muttered, pulling off his gloves. "I don't do things to be thanked. You needed heat, that's all." When she reached for a bowl, he paused. "Not that one. The blue one's lighter." June blinked. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" He just grunted, ladling soup for her. As she sat eating, her eyes drifted across the room and caught on something on the mantel. A carved frame, uneven, clearly handmade. Inside, no photograph, just a name etched in soft script. "Ellie." She looked up. "Your daughter." Thomas froze mid-step. For a second his jaw tensed. "Yes, she's not here?" "A long time ago," he exhaled. "The fire took her." June's hands went still on the bowl. "I'm sorry." He gave a single nod. "Me too." A silence stretched between them, not heavy, just wide, like a canyon where grief still echoed. "I cry for mine." "Too," June whispered. "And she isn't even born yet." Thomas turned away. "I'm not good at saving people." "Never was. You saved me." He shook his head. "No, I just hate seeing people freeze." He grabbed his coat, heading for the door, then added, his voice low, "But I can keep someone warm. That I can still do." And he was gone again into the snow. The days began to fall into a rhythm. His kindness always came wrapped in a rough bark. He never hovered, but he noticed everything. That night, the sky turned the color of iron. The wind scraped at the walls. And she heard it, a sound that did not belong, hoofbeats. Faint at first, but approaching. June's eyes shot to the window. Nothing but black trees and snow. Then Thomas was beside her. No words, no questions. He pulled her up, walked her to the far end of the cabin. He pressed a panel in the wall. It opened into a small space beneath the floor. "In there," his voice was sharp. "Take the blanket. Stay low." Her heart pounded as she obeyed. Thomas shut the panel just as the hoofbeats stopped outside. She couldn't see, but she could hear. The door opened, a rush of cold air. "Looking for a girl, pregnant, might have come through this way." Thomas's reply was low and even. "You see, a woman out here, she's not pregnant for long." A pause. "We got reason to believe she ran this way. We're paid to bring her back. I'm not paid to talk." Boots scraped on the floor. June held her breath. "You mind if we look around?" "I do." Silence again. Then a second man's voice, more cautious. "He's got an axe by the door." "She ain't." "Here," Thomas said. "And if she was, I'd say the same thing. Now leave, before the wolves start wondering what you smell like." Another pause, then retreating steps. The door creaked shut. 10 minutes passed. The panel opened. Thomas stood there, jaw tight, axe still in his hand. "They're gone," he muttered. "For now." June crawled out, shaky. "They'll come back." "Yes. What will we do?" He met her gaze. "We leave before the next snow. I know someone." She looked up, her breath catching. Where? An old woman who knows herbs lives near the river pass. She owes me nothing, which means she won't lie to me. He began gathering supplies, moving fast. Why are you doing this? June asked softly. Thomas paused, looked at her for a moment. Then he said, his voice as gruff as ever, because I don't leave a fire to go out on its own. Before dawn broke, Thomas was packed. No sound but the soft thud of supplies into canvas, the clink of a tin cup, the creak of wood under his boots. He moved fast, silent, focused. June stirred from the makeshift bed, clutching her belly as another pulse of pressure rolled through her spine. "What's happening?" she whispered. He didn't look at her as he pulled a blanket over her shoulders. "We're leaving, now." Without another word, he scooped her up, wrapped her in furs, and carried her to the wagon. He placed her gently on the wanda, straw bed he had made, then tied the cover down. As if wrapping something precious the world had no right to touch, the wagon rolled out through the trees, its wheels muffled by snow. They moved in silence. June lay there, one hand on her belly, the baby kicking as if it knew danger trailed them. By nightfall, the forest thinned, revealing a stone chimney rising from behind a hill. A lazy curl of smoke rose from it. An old woman stepped out before they reached the gate, as if she had been expecting them. She was small but unbent, her eyes as sharp as broken flint. "You brought the storm with you," she said to Thomas. He gave a single nod. "And the fire I need to keep lit." The old woman looked at June, her eyes flicking over the swollen belly and pale cheeks. Then she stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, she laid June on a cot by the fire, her hands careful but sure. "She's close," she said. "The child wants to come soon." Thomas stood nearby, arms crossed, his face unreadable. "They'll find us, won't they?" June asked. "They'll try," the old woman replied. "But this is my land, and I see the footprints of guilt long before the guilty arrive." That night they came, 3 men, loud, armed. That night the wind came. It howled like a woman in mourning, rattling the shutters like ghost knuckles. And that night the child decided to come. June was on the bed, knees bent, breath ragged, sweat mingling with tears she didn't remember crying. Thomas stood nearby, stiff and pale. "I don't know how to," he started. The old woman cut him off with a sharp look. "You keep trees standing in a storm. You keep a fire alive in a broken stove. Tonight you keep her." He nodded mute, then knelt beside June. "I'm here," he said. That was all he knew how to be. June gritted her teeth through another contraction. "That's enough." The wind screamed louder, slapping the windows. June's body buckled. She cried out a long guttural sound, torn from someplace ancient. Thomas caught her hand. They were both surprised. "You're not alone," he said. Her eyes locked with his. In them, she did not see fear. She saw a stillness, like trees that had withstood centuries. "Breathe with me." She did. Another contraction, another wave of pain. Her hands dug into his shirt, pulling, anchoring. He did not flinch. He held the basin. He lit another candle. He pressed a cold cloth to her burning forehead. "Tell me what hurts," he said. "Everything," she gasped. "Then give it to me." She sobbed, not in pain, but in trust. Thunder cracked overhead. The fire flared as if an answer. The old woman leaned forward. "Now, girl, push," June screamed. Thomas did not move. And then, a sound. Not wind, not fire. A cry. Sharp, piercing, fierce. The child was born into this storm, between 2 people who had never asked for anything, but were given everything in a single screaming instant. The old woman lifted the baby, cleaned and wrapped her in cloth, and placed her on June's chest. "She's strong," she said, "like her mother." June stared at the tiny face, slick with life. The baby wailed again, fists balled. June laughed, A soft cracked sound, but real. She's perfect. She's yours too, June said. He shook his head. No. But she reached out, took his calloused hand, and pressed it to the child. She was born because you kept the fire burning. Because you stayed when no one else did. You held the storm back long enough for her to come. His breath caught. The baby stopped crying, her eyes drifting open. You kept the fire for me, June whispered. Now I'll keep her for us. For a long time, Thomas said nothing. He just stood there, the storm wailing outside, a child breathing beneath his fingers. And something like warmth rose in his chest, a warmth that hurt more than any axe swing ever had. He almost smiled. The cradle was finished by dawn. Thomas had carved it from pine, sanded it smooth, and etched wild flowers along its curves. The simple, wild kind that sprung up near riverbeds in spring. It was sturdier than the old one, made to last through winters, through weight, through time. He placed it beside the fire, then stepped back, rubbing the ache in his shoulder. June came in, the baby cradled against her chest, a blanket wrapped tight around them both. She paused at the sight. You made this, he shrugged. The old one squeaked. June ran her hand over the carvings, her eyes misting. These flowers, I used to pick them with my mother before everything. She'd want the child to see them again, he said, turning away, his voice flat. That night, June hummed lullabies she had not sung since childhood, the melodies soft and strange in the air, like ghosts returning to the world. Thomas sat nearby, sharpening a blade, his eyes half-lidded. He never joined in, but he never left. He was always near, silent, steady, never farther than the next breath. Then one afternoon, the dogs began to growl. Footsteps approached. A wagon. Thomas stepped outside, axe in hand. June stayed in the shadows of the cabin, her heart thundering. 3 men dismounted. The one in front held a paper. We're looking for a runaway white woman. Gave birth recently. Her brother put up a bounty. Thomas said nothing. The man stepped closer. We were told a woman matching her lives around these parts. Thomas slowly raised the axe. She's a criminal. She's a mother. The man smirked. You hiding her? Thomas's eyes turned to steel. You want her? He said. You'll have to take me first. Something in his stance shifted. It was not just defiance. It was something darker, a weight to his frame, a storm behind his calm. It was the kind of threat that came not from words, but from men who had nothing left to lose but one small light they had sworn to keep alive. The man hesitated. The second rider nudged his shoulder. Not worth it. He's serious. Thomas did not move. The men mounted again, casting glances back, but they did not stay. When it was quiet again, June stepped out from the shadows. She held her daughter tightly. She looked at Thomas, really looked. The worn lines in his face, the weather-beaten coat, the calloused hand still wrapped around the axe handle. And the eyes, not cruel, not soft, but burning with something no man had ever shown her. Loyalty. She walked up slowly. You didn't have to do that. He looked away. They weren't worth the fight. She smiled gently. You are. Thomas said nothing. She stepped closer, touching his arm. You're not just a roof, she whispered. You're a hearth, a place. She paused, her voice soft. A home. Spring melted the last of the snow. The cabin now stood taller, expanded and reinforced. A second window let in the golden light. The cradle sat near the hearth, polished clean. On the wooden table built by Thomas, there were small notches where spoons had landed too hard and laughter had followed. They had returned, not just to the woods, but to a place they could call home. Thomas still rose before dawn, still chopped wood in the silence. But his axe now rested beside toys he was carving. Tiny animals, little horses and bears, the kind a child would one day name. June nursed the baby by the fire. The girl, now months old, had Thomas's quiet gaze and her mother's mouth, always forming small, determined sounds. The village nearby, once a name spoken only in caution, had begun to send word. An invitation, a festival, a communal fire. At first, Thomas resisted. "We're not people for gatherings," June had smiled. "No, but she might be," so they went. The ceremony was simple. A large fire circled by stone, surrounded by faces lined with weather and time. June was invited to speak. Thomas shifted beside her, stiff in a clean shirt, the baby sleeping against his chest. Wrapped tight in a woven sling, she stepped forward. Her feet felt heavier than usual, not with fear, but with memory. She faced the flames. "My name is June," she said. "Once I was sold by my own blood. I was shackled, I was silenced. I ran not because I was brave, but because the child inside me kicked so hard, I thought she was begging me to fight." She looked toward Thomas, then back at the crowd. "I was not saved by a hero in shining armor. I was not rescued with promises or poetry." Her voice steadied. "I was found by a man who said little, who cursed under his breath and never smiled much. But he built fires, he left meat on the table. He sharpened knives so I could feed myself. And he stood between me and those who wished me gone." She touched her chest, not with speeches, but with shelter, with warmth, with a cradle carved from loss. The fire crackled louder. "He never told me I was safe. He simply made it true." A hush fell. She stepped back. And in the silence, Thomas stood. He approached her slowly. From his pocket, he drew a small item. A wooden blade, smoothed along the edge, carved with a single word. "Hope." He crouched beside their daughter, placing it gently into her tiny hand. "She'll outgrow it," he said, his voice rough, "but she remember it was sharp once." The baby blinked. Up at him, the carved word resting in her palm. That night, they returned to the cabin. The fire crackled inside, slow and warm. June rocked the baby, humming softly. Thomas sat nearby, carving a new piece of wood, his brow furrowed in focus. Not because it was difficult, but because one day she would hold it. That was enough to jindas. Make it holy. Outside, snow began to fall. Quiet, unhurried, but it no longer carried memory, only silence. And that, finally, was peace.